I noticed that with like my birthday because there's this tendency.
I was about to say birthdays are a huge
birthdays
example.
Birthdays
are
the worst because you wake up in the morning going, okay, this is my day. This day is supposed to be all about me. My day is supposed to be perfect. Focus should be on me. I should be getting attention. And then like the littlest thing goes wrong, like it normally would on any day, and it's like, what? But this is my day. It's why is that? And then you get more bent out of shape than usual. And then like
now you can't even enjoy your day.
Right. And just because the focus, everybody's life doesn't like suddenly revolve around you.
Yeah.
Which of course is not going to, but because of that, now you're unhappy all day.
Yeah.
So basically around that same time, like, so I came back, and shortly after I came back,
it was like mid-90s,
right?
You came back 95, 96-ish?
I was born in 94, so he was like he had just turned a year old when we came back, so it would have been 95, yeah. And so I was trying to, when I came back from LA, like my focus was really suddenly became very much about like, okay, I need to figure things out spiritually. And so I started just getting up early in the morning and reading Bhagavad Gita and trying to like really understand what is this philosophy. And I started taking shelter of Bhakti Tirtha Swami and going to the temple regularly again, which I did take the kids to the temple quite a bit in LA as well. But so then so that was 95, and around, like, I guess within a year or so of me getting back to Gitanagari, my friend, who was the daughter of the temple presidents back in the day, came to visit.
The one that was living on that corner house.
I'm trying to think, was it actually within? No, it might have been a few years later. Because I think she came to visit like right after I gave birth to Pishima, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And because there's pictures of her holding Pishima and stuff, I think. So her name's Janava. And they live in upstate New York now. And honestly, I've lost touch with her in recent years. But like I used to keep up with her on Facebook and stuff. But anyway, she came to visit, and we were having some discussion about her upbringing and like where she was with things spiritually and stuff like that. And she was also had been like reading some of the scripture and stuff like that, but she was expressing how, and I hope I'm not remembering this wrong. I hate like quoting other people. I'm worried I'll do it incorrectly. Anyway, I guess we should get started again.
Yeah, so you're talking about Janava.
I was talking about Janava. So Janava came to visit, and she and I were having a conversation about spiritual matters and like kind of where we both were at with things. And she had also been doing some reading of Bhagavad Gita and trying to figure out where she was with things spiritually. And she was expressing to me that she had felt, and again, I hope I'm quoting her correctly. I don't want to like actually quote her because it's been so long, you know. But she was expressing something along the lines of that she, at least growing up, had not really understood the philosophy or why, like she didn't feel connected to Krishna consciousness for herself as a kid, and she was still not sure where she was with it as an adult. She didn't really consider herself a devotee, so to speak, but that can mean a lot of different things too. You know, that can even just be a sense of genuine humility as well. Yeah. But she was saying that growing up, she felt that they were discouraged in the Gurukul from asking questions, that it was like, we do this because you're told to do it. You know, you
You
get up
chart
in the
yourself
morning,
up.
we
Yeah.
chant, all the regular principles, all the rituals, everything was like, because I said so. Kind of,
Sorry, I'm just getting them to. I don't want
That's
to seem
okay.
like I'm being rude. I'm getting them to stop smacking with the pole because that's coming through the wall pretty loud with the smashing and pulling on the water repeatedly.
Before I call you out on rudeness.
I don't. That seems to be kind of the sound they'll probably continue doing if somebody doesn't. So I'm texting Shara asking if she can.
Oh, that's good.
Stop that. So.
Anyway, so because she expressed that she felt a bit of disconnect from Krishna consciousness because growing up she didn't feel like she was free to ask questions. And then I think even as an adult looking back on that, she was, I think, also questioning whether the adults at the time had much faith if they were so afraid of kids asking questions.
Yes.
And that made her doubt the philosophy.
Right.
And I was like blown away by that because I was just raised so differently.
Yeah.
Because we weren't so actively involved and I wasn't in the ashram and everything was much more, I feel like my upbringing in Krishna consciousness was in a lot of ways organic because it was like more just seeing my mom's devotion and her attachment to Srila Prabhupada and, you know, and like just the basics, like the really important basics were like something that my mom always tried to make sure that I understood. But it was without any of the dogma, without any of the ritual, without any of
It was coming from the heart.
the surface things. It was, and not to diss the surface things because they can have a positive benefit as well.
Yeah.
But it was all about just like the deep understanding, the heart connection. And because of that, like I was blown away by what Jonava was saying, and I didn't even realize that could be a thing. That like, why would you not let kids question things? Like, why would you not want to explain in detail so that they understand? And I was like, wow. So between that and then the other thing that was interesting for me that I failed to say before was that when I when I was in devotee community, like for instance, when I was in LA, there were a lot of like devotee youth out there. And I made friends with some of them and stuff, but I always felt like an outsider there because I didn't have the cultural training that they did. Like they played mridanga or danced or like there was so much cultural richness that the kids who went to Gurukul got that I didn't get. And so there were...
You were like in between the two worlds.
Right.
Still almost feeling like an outsider no matter where you went.
No matter where I went.
Yeah.
And also just feeling like there was something I missed out on in terms of the devotee culture that I felt like it was really important for kids to not miss out on. Yeah. And that it was a way for them to socially bond with one another that I was missing, that I was like, oh, I don't want my kids to miss that. So between that sense that I got from having the opportunity to hang out with other devotee youth in a devotee environment in LA, and then coming home and having that conversation years later with Jonava, it really struck me that it was super important to create a safe space for kids to question things, to express themselves in community, and also to give them some cultural exposure. And I felt like at Gitanagari, we were so isolated, and there wasn't like a Bharatanatyam teacher and a Mridanga teacher, and there wasn't like a lot of that cultural stuff, there wasn't as much access to. And so I was like, how can I somehow give these kids at least some of that culture and let them understand how they can own it for themselves, that this is for them. It's not just the adults doing this and saying, you should do it too because I told you to. And after that visit with Jonava, I made it a point shortly thereafter, after she left, to start the first
the Sunday school, right?
The first Sunday school.
Yeah.
And I had gotten some little bit of curriculum, but I wasn't sure how much I wanted to stick strictly to a curriculum because my primary focus was, how can you guys feel like this is for you? And, you know, like I wanted it to be about you guys. So I didn't want to be bringing to the table like, okay, guys, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And like it was about me and what I wanted to do. So my first meeting with you guys was to just sit down and say, hey, how you guys doing? How are you feeling about Krishna consciousness, about your part in the community? Do you have any questions?
Was that in the new temple that you did that?
Yeah.
I remember that. We were all
temple.
sitting around there.
You remember that first meeting?
Yeah. It was
And
nice.
I was like, is there
It felt
any...
like somebody actually wanted to hear what we thought.
Yeah,
And I don't know that we
you
all
and my
necessarily felt like
mom.
that really with other adults. Not to say other adults were rude to us
Yeah.
or anything, but like you made it, like you're saying, made it a point to really be like, hey, what is your thoughts?
I feel like you, my mom, and Mammy, out of all, and I love all the devotees in Gita Nagari, not that, like, but I felt like of the three, or
Well,
you
those
guys
three always
really
gave
got,
us
I
attention.
felt like you got on the kids' level
Yeah. Yeah.
to communicate with us. rather
Yeah, and,
than
like you
communicating
never
it
felt like
with
they
us.
thought you were less because you were a kid.
Yeah.
Like your mom would talk to you just like a
Yeah.
normal person when you were a kid. Your mom, your mom, you, his mom, and Mammy definitely were like very kid friendly in the sense that they
Yeah.
talked to us as if we were equals, always.
Yeah.
It was never like a thing
I'm an
where you
adult.
felt like
You're a child.
right.
Oh
Right.
God, I'm so good.
Right.
Oh, God.
And honestly, I think
That stuff drives me nuts.
for me that mentality came from a couple of different things. One is that like I said, even growing up, I always understood all living beings to be of value and deserving of respect and dignity. That's the word I was looking for the other night that Kastuba and Raghunath always use. Dignity.
Yeah, dignity.
That like all living entities deserve a level of dignity. And what to speak of child human beings, you know what I mean? Like, to me, like just because you're in a child body, like I don't know what your past life experiences are. I don't. You might have more experiences than I do. To you might have stuff to teach me. Why would I treat you like you're less than? Just because you're in a small body and you've been less years in this particular body, in this particular experience, right? So I mean, I recognized that you did have less years of experience in this particular body with this particular mind and therefore needed some guidance and whatnot. But at the same time, you're still a viable individual just as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
So the combination of that basic understanding that I feel like I always had, combined with being a mom at such a young age. So like, for me, he was like my little friend that came along, more so than like I'm the mom, you're the kid, because I was very aware I was still figuring things out, despite the don't talk back stuff.
He wanted to hear my opinion, but also didn't want to hear my opinion.
That's how it feels with Shruti and Shar and I, because like the age gap is much less versus the relationship with. I tend to notice that with Veda, we tend to be more parenty, whereas with Shruti, it always felt more friendly.
Gotcha.
Because we were also like so young and like, whoa.
Right.
I think there's also
the dynamic.
there's also a misconception when we talk about being a friend with your kid that people think that means you let them get away with nonsense.
True.
Right.
Sometimes when people will
Good
talk
friend.
like people think they should be their kid's friend instead of being their parents. Like no, it's not instead of. It's a way of parenting. It doesn't mean that you don't get if your kid's acting like a
You
nonsense.
can be
You don't
both.
put them in. Yeah.
It's not
You can't put
I
them in
mean,
their
like
place.
you
It
said,
means
a
they
good
feel like
friend.
a person. Like you feel like
a good friend wouldn't
A
steer
good
you
friend would,
Right.
and a
and
good
they tell
friend
you off
wouldn't-
when you're acting like a fool.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. They teach you things that you don't know. Like and
For sure.
So
Right.
it's a back and
Right.
forth. It's a relationship. It's not. But
Yeah.
the whole
And then
don't
you
ask questions.
also-
People do that to kids all the time, even regardless of religion.
ridiculous.
Don't ask questions. I'm the parent. Why? Because I said so.
Right.
I know.
And
See, now I catch myself doing that, especially when I'm stressed.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then as I reflect and think back, because of the way we were brought up and the philosophy and stuff, I feel like inevitably it wiggles its way in there, and I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have been like that. But at least I can catch myself when I'm doing it, and I know a lot. I mean, it's a struggle. It is hard.
It is a struggle, and
Because
I was
you're
gonna.
getting your ego caught up in there. My kid isn't listening to me. I take care of him. I do all this stuff, but it's like you don't do anything. And only when you get into that mindset that you think. Nietzsche and I were talking about this last night about being the controller, being the creator. He's like, I'm creating this thing. Like I deserve credit for it, but I was like, you're not creating anything. The inspiration's coming from within.
Yeah.
And you're just the vessel that's enacting the inspiration given to you Krishna.
Right.
But when you think you're doing it, that's when you get frustrated when you're not getting the result that you want.
The other thing about parents
That
that
is true.
I've always thought, which I don't know if this is anybody else's opinion, this may just be my opinion, but as an adult, as a parent, especially with biological parents, but even with adopted parents, because either way you're making a decision to have kids, and you can be like, well, I didn't want kids. You had relations that led to you having a kid. You made the choice. You're basically inviting a child into your life.
Yes.
Right.
So the child doesn't owe you squat just because you invited a child into your life.
Yes.
You decided to take care of the kid. You decided, and you want to build a relationship that makes them feel like they want to reciprocate with you. They don't owe you just because they came into existence.
Yeah.
There should be a feeling of like,
Yeah,
I want to do
absolutely.
for my parents because my parents did so much for me.
Yeah.
But a lot of parents, I think, come into it with this attitude of like, well, I do all these things for you.
I gave you life.
I did this.
Right,
I did that for you. It's like,
I brought you into this world. I could take you out.
yeah. And I mean, some of you jokingly, whatever, but when it's done, there's sometimes a real attitude of that. I've seen it with like some friends of mine growing up and stuff. That there's really that kind of feeling, which is not a nice feeling.
No.
It doesn't make a kid feel super welcome or whatever. It makes the kid feel like, oh, you want me to be a certain way, or else you're going to be upset with me about it.
Yeah.
I have to
Right,
be the way
right.
you expect me to be. People
Right.
with girl should be like this, a man should be like this, my kid's going to be like this. It's fine if other kids do this, but my kid can't do this. All these things, and it's like that doesn't make your kid feel like they can be themselves. What you're teaching them to do is follow someone. Right now it's
and
you. Later it'll be someone else. And will it be a good person? You don't know that.
Right.
And even a good person makes mistakes. So you're teaching your kid not to really think for themselves fully out of whatever stuff that's coming from your past. And it's a dangerous. We all
actually
gonna do
very
it. We're all
dangerous.
gonna do it.
Parenting.
to some
I'm guilty
extent.
of it. Oh God, yes.
We're all
That's
gonna
the
do it to
hardest
some
part of
extent.
parenting. But that's why association is so important, and that's why I think a community like Gidanaga, where if you're surrounding yourselves with people that understand the struggles you're going through, but also are on the same journey of like self-discovery, and then it creates this atmosphere that I feel like we grew up in. Even as a kid, I was always very sensitive to the fact that we're very lucky growing up like this.
For sure.
I didn't necessarily know how to put it, but I knew in my mind, I'm like, most people don't. And when I joined the army, and I started to befriend people, that some of my friends come from some fucked up situations, backgrounds, and I hear stories of how they grew up. And as I got older, I was like, that was like the Garden of Eden, bro.
We were really lucky.
We were super lucky to grow up like that. And it was,
my mom would apologize to me all the time. How many kids really have, and not to say the parents don't ever apologize to kids, but my mom did it a lot. If she felt at all that she had been out of line the previous day or something, that she had been too moody, whether or not I had done something that was I shouldn't have done it too, she would come back to me the next day and be like, hey, yesterday I was having a bad day, I hadn't eaten, whatever the reason was, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you like that, I could have just said it nicely. She wouldn't say that she was wrong in the sense of if I needed to be corrected, she would still come in and take ownership for I could have communicated to you in a nicer way, and I'm sorry I didn't.
Yeah, sometimes I got to a point where at some point, we both got to a point when you were a teenager where you would recognize that maybe I hadn't eaten, and you would be like, Mom, I'm happy to hear what you have to say, but could I please make you something to eat first?
Yeah, let me give you some food, and you're like, it's not the food! I'm upset because you never. And I'm like, okay, but here's some food. Eat, and I sit her down with the food and the water, and she'd eat.
I remember a very specific conversation where you were like, Mom, I know you have very valuable things that I need to hear that you want to share with me, but can I please fix you something to eat first, and then I'll be happy to hear.
Yeah, and then Mom was like, you're right, I do feel a lot better now.
But I also became more and more aware over the years that when it was something like that, like I was just hangry or a hormonal thing was going on, and I would be like, I know that I'm overreacting here. I'm pretty sure that what I'm saying is still important, but maybe the way I'm saying it is not so great. Yeah. But even while I'm screaming,
she would scream that too.
I would articulate that I knew that I was a little off, and yet please just hear the words I'm saying. And
I never took it personally either because you would vocalize it too. So even if you didn't acknowledge it one time, I already knew that. So I didn't feel like you were mad at me per se. I was just mom's just going through it today.
Yeah.
Or even like with, like time of the month type stuff, I would just know like, okay, she's hormonal, like you said. Like it's just like, okay, her hormones are raging today. It's okay.
Yeah,
like,
try not to take it.
I'm not gonna take it personally. And a lot of times with the hormone stuff, you would apologize as soon as like the next day you would come into my room in the morning and be like, I'm sorry. I was,
right.
Like, it's fine.
Right.
Like, I learned so quickly because of the fact that you would take ownership when you were off, that like when you were off, it wasn't because of me. Whereas I think if you didn't take ownership of it so much, I don't know that I would have gotten that message. I mean, maybe, but I don't know that I would have.
Yeah, I think it's so important because then that helps you to not doubt yourself in the world just because of how somebody else is acting towards you. You can know that it might have something to do with you, but it also might just be something they're going through that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And so you don't jump to taking it personally when somebody is out of sorts and how they're dealing with you.
Yeah.
And I hear what you're saying, Hamza, about like the frustration level and how a lot of it has to do with ego. But I also think a lot of it has to do with like how hard you're working to try to keep everything together in a household and take care of the kids and everything, and how you're tired sometimes, and sometimes you're just like I'm tired, I'm hungry, like there's things that I'm
making all these sacrifices,
I need,
and you're
and like maybe they're impeding your ability to take care of yourself, like because you're hungry and you have to deal with some craziness going on with them first, and you're just like, can you just do what I need you to do just because I need you to do it, for crying out loud.
Yeah, no, I experienced that much more with Veda than with Shruti. Shruti was more like Nitai, or is, more laid back, kind of.
And a little bit more intuitive.
Is much more like Dhruva or Abhay, kind of like clingy, demanding, like the second kid, like.
Right.
And it's like, having a conversation and like, come up and like, just, you need to suck the attention away. And when I'm like, they're trying to like last night I was trying to talk to Nitya and I was getting frustrated, but then I caught myself and I'm like, okay, he just wants to come out and hang out with us and like, but it's frustrating because when it's like over and over, and when I'm in the right headspace, it's no big deal. I don't take it personally, but it's hard when the stresses of being work and mainly I've noticed since COVID, it's been like Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a whole other
it's something I need to work
on top of everything.
But I like
else.
that. I'm going to work on communicating like that. So if I am getting upset, I'm gonna make sure I say why.
Right.
Because
it's important for them to know. And then also it also, like my mom said, it doesn't necessarily invalidate what's being said. But it's saying like, hey, if I'm coming off a little too rude with what I'm saying, I'm sorry. I'm just really not,
Yeah.
And also it gives them permission to have emotions too. I think
true.
then when they're having a bad day and they're freaking out, they don't because sometimes like you don't know how to. If you don't learn from your parents how to handle your emotions, you may not learn how to handle your emotions.
I do go and I always make.
And to acknowledge it gives it less power, I think, too. Because if you acknowledge that I'm in a bad spot mentally, and that's why I'm kind of being rude to my brother or to whomever. I'm like, I was rude to my friend. Oh man, like you realize it's like, oh, I hadn't eaten or whatever, and then you're aware and it has less control. Whereas a lot of people just think they're right.
Right.
And then they're just mad and they're getting in arguments and stuff.
Yeah,
and they don't really have that. Not to say that they never do.
They don't have the self-awareness.
But I've met a lot of people that don't quite have the self-awareness built into them, at least in that regard, of like where their emotional state is when they're dealing with other people. They can tell that other people are a little bit off real quick.
And acknowledging that outside influences can impact your emotional aware or your emotional space and like where you are emotionally. And if you, I think the more you're aware that that can be a thing, then you also can learn to stop it from happening as much, like eat on time or or catch yourself when you're not going to, whatever it is, go to bed on time, eat on time, or just notice it when it's happening. And then like you said, like to be able to save your friendships, even to say, oh right, yesterday I was upset and it was probably more the fact that I hadn't eaten yet or whatever than it was that I was actually right and you were actually wrong, so maybe I should apologize. yeah, I mean, just having that awareness that we're not always right, that we're fallible, and that also
except for me, but
we're impacted by outside influences.
Yeah.
And to acknowledge that when it happens, and I think also the acknowledgement and understanding. At some point, I wish I could like tell you exactly how I came to it, but well, to be honest, I think I mostly came to it in more recent years when Abhay joined the military. That you like your kids don't belong to you.
Nope.
Yeah.
Like you're given the responsibility to care for them for a particular period of time. It's a service.
Tools. You have to give them tools to go out in the world.
It's an important service.
Yeah.
And your job, and this I did get because I think part of why I supported him going into the military, even though it was something that I completely didn't relate to or understand.
Yeah.
And even everything that you do and what your sisters do, I believe strongly that my job as a parent was to prepare you to be
life.
an adult.
Yeah.
To prepare you, like you said earlier, like what's going to happen when your parents aren't there?
Right.
Who are they going to follow if you're teaching them
If you're
to become
teaching
a
them to follow
follower?
the strongest personality in the room, that's what they're going to do.
Right, right.
And that's not always a good person. Look at history. There's a lot of bad, strong personalities.
Right. And what we really want to do, especially with kids that we're trying to bring up at spiritually enlightened as well, you want them to trust their own instincts. You want them to listen to the voice within. And to do that, you have to start teaching them that as a kid.
Yeah.
That they can trust themselves and that they don't just listen to you because you're the adult.
Right.
But like, you have to teach them to be a thoughtful, independent thinking individual.
Yeah.
And support that. I mean, I don't even think you really have to teach that. I think that's something.
It's intuitive.
It's intuitive, but you have to support it and create room for it.
Yeah. The parent, if you're not aware of your effect on the child, you drown out that voice. Then they grow up being really confused, really messed up because they just.
And we were doing, at one point at Gitanagari, we had like a parents group where we were reading like some parenting books and having meetings to like support each other with our parenting and give each other ideas for areas where we were like frustrated or having a hard time.
Cool.
And I remember something that I read in one of the books that we were reading, and it was saying about even in terms of protecting kids from abuse, it's so important that they trust their own instincts. So when they feel creeped out by somebody, and that they're allowed to say, I'm not comfortable with this. Or,
you don't try to tell them, well, that's okay, it's your uncle, it's fine.
Right, right. Like, I don't,
even if you don't
want
think
this
there's
person
anything there,
touching
maybe
me, or I don't want to give that person a hug.
Give them the governance over their own body.
Right.
Yeah.
Respect their feelings about their own body and who they want to be around or who they feel comfortable listening to.
That makes sense.
And I think even when we're trying to parent in a community, there's often this like, and this was something we sometimes had little issues with at Gitanagari because all the parents were like you said, I'm your mom too, right? So we were all trying to kind of co-parent and support each other by giving each other's kids guidance. But if you're not on the same, not only if you're not on the same page, like that would sometimes cause conflict because some parents had certain ideas that things should be this way or that way. But
Hamza said.
But Hamza said, at the end of the day, it's Hamza's authority. No, but also there were some parents who didn't take the time to like give you guys positive feedback or like actually just be present to you and spend time with you. They would do that with their own kids, but they weren't doing that with all the kids. And then they would come at you from left field to like chastise you about something.
Yeah.
And I would always stand up for you guys in those situations too, because I'm like, wait a minute. Like, yes, they should respect you because you're a senior devotee, you're an adult, etc. Yeah, but you don't really have the right to chastise them unless you've developed a loving relationship with them so that they know that chastisement is coming from a place of caring for them and for their well-being.
You used to, I remember, especially as I got older, I mean, I was going to say, like, I know that I could be sometimes very like vocal and like talk back and stuff, but also because at home, my mom and dad, like, they encouraged us to use our intellect and like, so when I like, if I, you would, you know, you could get frustrated because I had influence over the kids, and so sometimes they would follow me, and I totally get your frustration, like.
Yeah.
Hans doesn't want to do it, and in my book, I'm like, I don't want to act in this play. I don't want to do this, or whatever.
Right.
But then the other kids are following, and you get frustrated because something is happening. The dynamic is there, and we used to get into it sometimes, and I'd talk back, but like I never was like I hate Mother Purana, like nothing. Like I always appreciated it, and the fact that I could even interact with you like that was because I was comfortable with you, because there was a rapport there.
Yeah.
Versus like there was some times where like we'd all be playing, and I remember once a Kinshana came and wanted to tag along. I don't remember what happened, but he could be really annoying.
Well, he was very sensitive.
At that age,
he was very sensitive.
The
he was
age
much younger.
there.
Yeah, he was much younger.
I don't even remember what it was about.
But
she came out. He got mad because we weren't including him or something, and she came out and started yelling at me. When she had no idea what actually happened.
Yeah.
And I got right back at her. Like I do with you. And she was like...
Yeah.
And I didn't care. I'm like, okay, go tell my mama. Whatever. Like, you have no idea what you're doing, what happened.
That is always
and you're coming at me like that.
Too,
and I used to get... And that's why I did get an attitude. Because I was sick and tired of people not taking the time to build that. But then expecting to hold me accountable because I'm the oldest kid. Like, that's not fair.
Right, like when they don't take the time for it. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of that with parents that will also when people just come into the room and assume that they know who's at fault.
Yeah.
Especially when generally what they assume is not their kid.
Exactly.
It's one thing. It's just to say. Now, again, it's probably just as bad if they come in and just blame their kid instantly.
Oh, absolutely.
But really, the goal is to come in and say, "Hey, what has happened?" And then we talk to a couple of kids. Hey, what's going on? Like, I just want to make sure everybody has a good time. I'm not mad at anybody. Just want to know what is going on.
You don't need to come in and punish them. Come in and help them resolve the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Help them mediate it out.
And how do you resolve situations? You find, you talk about it.
Or take a break and then talk about it.
And you look at what does each person actually have control over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because often, as human beings, whether we're children or adults, a lot of conflict has to do with I'm trying to control something that is not within my control. A lot of frustration comes from I'm trying to control something that's not within my control.
Ego.
Ego. Exactly. Yeah. And kids are not, I mean, they're just like mini adults. They do the same thing. They're like, I'm trying to control what this other kid is doing. I want to do it this way, or I want the group to do it this way, and he wants the group to do it this other way, and each one of them is trying to control other people in the situation. And I would try to, this is one thing that I do think I did, I mean, I know I made mistakes as a parent, for sure. I'm not trying to say I'm like the authority or anything, but one thing I really felt like I did right that my kids as adults have carried on and has helped them a lot in their lives, I think, is that I would often, whether they were having conflict with each other or having conflict with other kids, I would always sit them and the other kids down, because usually I had those relationships, and if I didn't, I was trying to establish those relationships with the other kids. I would sit them down and say, okay, so tell me your side. Now you tell me your side. Okay. Now what do you think you could have done differently that might have avoided that conflict? And often the kids, just like adults, would as well be like, well, no, I mean, but he should have done this differently, or she should. I'd be like, no. But you can't control him, so you can only control you. So what could you have done differently? And then I would ask each kid that, and I think that helped to build healthier relationships between the kids too. And definitely as adults, I think you take a minute. I mean, I know my kids have.
It teaches you to inwardly reflect. Yes, something's going on out here, but what's going on in here too? That's contributing to it.
And if I'm frustrated about a situation, if I focus on what I have control over, then I get my sense of power back. Because I think a lot of our frustration is like a disempowerment. You feel like a lack of power to have impact on your situation.
Yeah.
But when you look at what you actually for sure have control over, then
it's really not a lot.
It's not a lot.
It's only
not a lot. It's really just your perspective.
Yeah, you don't have control.
You have control over your perspective, and you also have control over how you choose to
react to situations.
That's it.
Yeah.
But see, him and I were talking about this last night too, about free will, and how it's such a crucial thing because free will, like in our philosophy, I mean, we know, but like Krishna is like he doesn't want to force us to love him, and that is because where our love. Free will resides, and that's really all the power and agency that we have is our free will, and that's why when you give it up willingly to Krishna, and this is where like I've heard people at work asking questions and stuff that basically what I get from it is that they think, well, if I have to give up my free will to get Krishna, isn't that not free will? And
but
I'm
you
thinking,
freely gave it up.
But you freely gave it up. Exactly. And that's the beauty of the bhakti yoga and the relationship that you can have. And once you accept that, wow, when I actually give up my free will to serve someone else.
I was going to say, you're not really giving up your free will. You're giving up your desire to serve yourself with your free will. You can use your free will to make a decision to try to be like, surprise them with this nice thing, do this thing.
And I was going to say, again, it's not like you...
But are you doing those things, nice things for someone because it makes you happy, making other people happy, or are you doing it because you just selflessly want to make people happy?
And that's the trick, is to learn how to really do that for others.
It's hard, It
really is.
Because then there's ego tied up to it, like... and. You see TikTok videos, YouTube, people going and like recording them giving money to homeless people and stuff, and it's cool. No, it's a nice thing. It is a nice thing, but it's like, are you doing it because you get some social media clout for it? Yeah. And I'm not asking you to answer that question for me, but as I'm watching them, I'm like, would you still do it if there was no camera there, or are you only doing it because you're getting views? Yeah. Like, what's the reason behind it?
Yeah. Right. And that really is the internal question all the time.
The other morning,
what is your motivation?
Yeah, exactly. The other morning on my way to work, Saturday, I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm like, I couldn't go back to bed. I was like, oh God. And so I just got up. I had slept on the floor too because my back was just like killing me. I get up. I'm like, son of a bitch, I guess I'll go to work early. And I get in the truck and I start driving down the road, and I was like, oh, I'll get there early and I'll just park in the parking lot and like watch some YouTube, educate myself on crypto, whatever,
Right.
And then I'm like, no, I was driving down the road and I'm like, it's early enough I can go by Mangal Arati and I can stop and see Krishna. And there was a part, I could feel that there was this, now there was a tug of war. And it's like, it just happened in a second, but it felt like, that little part of me, I'm tired. I'm like, I just want to just cruise to work and I have to turn around. And I was like, if I can't show Krishna that the first thing I'm willing to do in the morning is to go just see him quick before I go to work, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah. So I turned around, I went to the temple. I didn't even come in because I'm in my scrubs and I just peeked my head in. I saw Krishna, I said a little prayer, I got back in the car, and then I opened up YouTube, and there was, a lecture of Ayendra Prabhu that I've heard many times before. It's one of my favorite lectures. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this on. Right? But on the way to work, before I turned around, I had just been listening to whatever music, and you're just kind of like, nah.
Yeah.
I felt so fired up just seeing him, Krishna in the temple, and then I listened to Ayendra Prabhu give this lecture on, he's talking about how if you're just chanting the holy name, but it's not coming from your heart with love, it's just words. And it's not actually, it is the Maha Mantra, but it's to make advancement, the Maha Mantra needs to be coming from the heart with pure love. Yeah. And it was like, zing. I listened to him and then I listened to, I was so motivated and fired up till 10 o'clock. And
wow,
I felt great. My back hurt, but I was not in this kind of funk just from making that one little. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I had this experience. Well, let me say what I'm saying, and then I'll give you the example. But that when you are trying to do something with love, and care for someone else, whether it's Krishna or even someone else in, you know, in a human or animal or whatever body, just someone else. If you're genuinely trying to do something for someone else, you naturally and automatically feel so much happier and more satisfied, because that's our natural position, is to be loving.
Yeah.
And when you're being loving, you feel happy. It's just automatic.
It is automatic.
But when and you feel enthusiastic. But when you're being selfish, or you're thinking about like, oh, how can I enjoy myself today, or how can I feel a little bit better, or how can I, and you're just focusing on yourself, you automatically feel dissatisfied.
And that's where the little things start to annoy you.
Oh, absolutely.
It's getting in the way.
You're like,
you want to enjoy.
And life is inconvenient. Life is
Yeah,
mad
it is. Hell
inconvenient.
yeah.
It's mad uncomfortable. Like, there's always those things present. And so if you're focusing on your own pleasure or enjoyment or comfort, which I do focus on comfort a lot. I'm all about comfort. But which is part of why we were talking about going to India, which is part of why I'm scared of going, because of like levels of physical austerity.
We all need to go together. That would be epic. We all need to go together.
But yeah, and I noticed that with like my birthday, because there's this tendency
I was about to say
think
birthdays are a huge
birthdays
example
are
of
the
this.
worst, because you wake up in the morning going, okay, this is my day. This day is supposed to be all about me. My day is supposed to be perfect. Focus should be on me. I should be getting attention. And then like the littlest thing goes wrong, like it normally would on any day, and it's like, what? But this is my day. Why is that? And then you get more bent out of shape than usual. And then like,
and now you can't even enjoy your day.
Right, and like, just because the focus, everybody's life doesn't like suddenly revolve around you.
Yeah.
Which of course is not going to, but because of that, now you're unhappy all day.
Yeah, usually the days that you make it about someone else, you feel the best.
Exactly.
Like for instance, if on someone's birthday you go and try to make their day the best it could possibly be, you'll actually have a great day.
Well, that's why
Exactly.
Vedically on your
Yeah,
birthday,
you're supposed to
it
give
wasn't
them.
about you. It was you going and serving food to others, donating in charity
Giving
to other
gifts.
people,
Right.
inviting others to the birthday. And some other cultures share that tradition. On your birthday, you give gifts out rather than give.
Yeah.
America, we're just such an effed up society.
We're just we're
So
self-centered.
materialistic,
self-centered.
so self-absorbed, and you know what? And here's like,
and it's no wonder
and
we're
there's
depressed and
there's physical symptoms. 70-80% obesity, the cancer, the heart disease. Like we're all like just.
Prabhupada even points out the service thing, because he talks about in the Science of Self-Realization, in one of the earlier parts of the book. I don't remember the exact wording, but he's talking about how sometimes when you tell somebody, oh, we're supposed to be servants, we're servants, like everybody gets in their ego about, I'm not serving anybody.
Yeah.
But then if you really look at it, we're all serving something. In fact, a lot of people who are single or just dating or whatever, they get animals. They're serving the animal now.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Our constitutional position is a servant, so we're always seeking to serve someone. We're seeking to serve another person in a relationship. We're seeking to serve animals, seeking to serve family. And at the really base level of somehow you're just like managed to perfect your selfishness and you're not serving anybody, you're still serving yourself. And that's pretty rare on
You're serving
your senses. You're not actually serving yourself
You're not
well.
true.
Yeah.
That's
You're not serving your true self. You're serving your whims.
Yeah.
Like,
And that's
oh,
the mind,
I want
it's
to
'cause
taste
you're-
this. Oh,
Yep.
I want to
And
experience
the problem
this.
with that is as soon as you can't satisfy one of those whims, now it's a bad day again.
Yeah.
Because you're not controlling your senses. You're serving them.
Prabhupada
Right,
says something
exactly.
like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, we should be worshiping, or we should be serving God, but instead people are serving DOG.
Yeah.
And you sit like now, and I heard that in one of his lectures, and every time I see a dog and I see someone standing behind it, it's like,
Getting ready
you
to pick
think
up
you're the
its
master
poop.
because you're holding the leash, but really,
You're
you're
serving a
going
dog.
to work, so you can pay to have the house, and then you pay to have all your little amenities, but you don't even get to enjoy them because you're out working all the time. The dog is the one living at home, the king of the roost. He gets taken out.
You pick up his
You
poop.
pick up his poop. You give him food. You give him water. The dog is the ruler of the roost, and he's like he's so savage when he cuts. It's like a goddamn and then you can't.
And this is not to say you
Because
shouldn't
it's
have
actually
pets.
no,
This is
accurate.
just pointing out that we
Of
all want to
course.
serve.
You all want to serve, exactly. So why
Right,
not
and we're all
serve-
happiest when we're serving.
Yeah, and if you serve the person who is
is maintaining everyone,
then
then
else
automatically
is
everything.
happy.
It's like watering the root of the tree. If he's
Yeah.
maintaining everyone and you're serving him, then you're assisting and maintaining everyone, and you're
Yeah.
just going to be fully satisfied.
Because you'll see
Right.
all like this is when I'm at work. Oh wait, so on the way to work after this all happened, I'm all like, and on the way out, excuse me, I grabbed a piece of pizza, cold pizza. I'm like, I'll just have this for lunch, and I'm driving down there, and about when I get to like 13th and University, there's always at that time in the morning, there's always the homeless people there, right? And so this one lady, I'm the only truck at the light, and I came up, and I for the most part don't give money out, but you know, I'll keep like extra clothes and things in the car sometimes. And so this lady came up to me, and I had the window down, and I was just like chilling, and I looked over, and she was like, "Hey, good morning." I'm like, "Good morning." And then she said, she didn't ask me for money. She said, "Do you have anything to eat? I'm so hungry." And I was like, "I don't have any money on me." And then I looked, and there was my cold piece of pizza. And I said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I don't have any money, but I have a cold piece of pizza. If you really want it, I'll give it to you." She was like, "Yeah, I'll take it." So I gave her. That was my lunch. And I was like, "Here you go."
Wow.
And it was on Saturday, and I'm thinking, and as I drove away, I was like, great, I don't know what I'm going to eat. Well, because on Saturdays, the cafeteria is closed. And they have a gift shop there, but it's like, okay, now I'm going to get chips and crap and whatever.
Right,
But,
right.
like, I ended up coming in, and like there was some leftover stuff from a little like get together that they had at work. So there was like things in the fridge I picked through and I ate, and I was like, there'll be something there, and there was. But
Wow.
I wasn't expecting to give that to her. It just happened. It was spontaneous, and I did it, and it just felt like the right thing to do.
Right.
But it's just interesting. I felt how all that like happened. But then when I go to work and I'm interacting with the patients, I try to see them as like every interaction. You're really interacting with Krishna, because Krishna is in the hearts of everyone, and so. You know, when I, you know, not every day, many days I'm like all stressed out and whatever, but when I do have those moments of clarity in my interactions with the patient, that's when I have these experiences where like they'll say something to me, and I've had this happen many times, where they say something really deep and profound that like I've been thinking about and ruminating about, and that's when I realize like, because of the state of consciousness I'm in this interaction, the super soul within them is able to pick up on that and tell me the things I need to hear. And it's about something totally different. He doesn't know what I'm thinking. And he's telling me, you know, like, anyway, not even to go into like an actual example, but it's happened before, and afterwards I'm like, wow, like, but then it's so easy to slip and then again forget to treat people like that. You know?
Yeah,
that's the
my
goal.
mom's main point is to teach the kids like they
as-
are spirit souls, because they are.
Yeah.
Teach everyone like they're a spirit
Right.
soul. Treat everyone like they're a devotee of
If
Krishna.
if we walked around treating everyone and serving everyone as if they were Krishna,
Oh my god.
like that's you
So-
know, like
So yeah, like theoretically, when you say that, it's like but like one question does come up in my mind with that is like, a lot of people are so busy serving themselves. So
I
what
want to
happens?
clarify, we are not Krishna, we're a part of Krishna, but
Right, but if you treated everybody
treated
like
everyone
they
like
were,
Krishna.
then you would be practicing being a perfect servant, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes people will just like suck you in and like not allow you to have healthy boundaries because their needs are not balanced, or their,
Of course.
you know what I mean? So like, how do you, I guess my question would be how, because this is a question I've asked myself sometimes, is like, there are certain people that I maybe have had some of those experiences with, and then I have a hard time being super present to them, and maybe even I'm less loving to them in the moment, because I have like this fear that they're gonna encroach upon my necessary boundaries. How do you treat everybody with that much love and care and still balance it with getting your own actual needs met and having healthy boundaries?
It's a good question. From what I've because I think about that a lot. And this is the one episode where we were talking about the shadow work, Carl Jung. I think it's important to remember that not only does Krishna reside in the hearts of everyone else, he also resides in your heart. So you also deserve to treat yourself with kindness.
Yeah, I think the question too is: Are you worried because you can't enjoy now and watch the Netflix show you wanted to watch, or are you worried because you really need some time alone to decompress?
And what are you going to do in that time?
Treat people kindly, because if you're lacking the ability to now treat people kindly because you don't want to take any time for yourself, that's when your needs are not being met.
Yeah.
Not when some sense enjoyment need cannot be met.
Yeah.
Or you mean desire.
Right.
Like, to be clear, what is a need and what is a desire.
Exactly. And I mean, that's a lifelong practice of figuring that out. Sometimes you make the wrong call.
It
is what it is. But when you start to notice, wow, I'm really trying to treat people like dirt, I think I need to take some time and recalibrate. Or I need to go to that one person who always makes me feel like I'm recalibrated now. Go do that. Like, you figure out what works for you. But I think a lot more of us than we actually admit do a lot more things for ourselves and claim their needs, and they're really just our desires.
Yes,
that's
for sure.
True.
I think a lot of it is actually a desire.
If it was, hey, Mataji, I can't do this right now because I have to go chant my japa or something, but like, if it's like, I don't want to do this because I've worked all week and I want my one day off so I can sit there and like play video games or watch TV
right.
or whatever.
And I'm not saying you don't need those download times. Sometimes you need a little bit of
like just to decompress.
That's true.
Yeah.
But here's the really cool thing that I've found, at least, and God, I need to chant 16 rounds every day. Oh my God. Because when I do, that is your decompression time. And I need to send you this lecture.
Especially if you do it right. And I think that's the hard part, like being attentive when you're chanting.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're right. Ayendra Prabhu, this lecture, oh my God, it like gave me goosebumps. Hearing him, the way he talks about the holy name. You know, when you're chanting the holy name.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's like, so he said, Sankirtan is very important because you're going out and you're inviting everyone else in to Lord Chaitanya's movement. Come on, right? Mm-hmm. But and that is the most powerful, the congregational chanting, right? It's irresistible to Krishna. But he said, when you're chanting your japa, that's like inviting Radha and Krishna into your private little garden. And you are now spending quality time with Radha and Krishna.
Wow.
And that's the mood that you should have when you're chanting your japa versus the mood you have when you're doing Sankirtan with the devotees. And Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he embodies that. He goes out and dances and does stuff, gets everyone going. But then in his private time with his very intimate associates, that's where like the real nectar comes out, and that's what the japa is. And and Ayendra Prabhu says, like, without Sankirtan and going out and doing that, your japa will never go deep. He said that. I was like,
oh wow.
Like, yeah. So it's all about the attitude, prior to the chanting, the mindless chanting of, it's easy. Like sometimes I'll drive and I'm like, oh yeah, I love driving. I find it meditative, but ideally, we should be chanting the japa. This is my quality time with Krishna.
Yeah.
If you were going out on a date, you would find someone to babysit the kids or find, you're setting aside time for you.
Yeah.
But we can't set aside quality time for Krishna. It's not about the amount of rounds you do. It's about the quality. But then the Goswamis also say that, the reason we keep track of how many rounds we do is just like when you go to the gym. You keep track of how many weights you lifted, how many reps you do. Yeah. That way you can see the improvement happening as you get more and more fit. Yeah. And so you have to do the same thing with your spiritual sadhana. You need to do it. You need to keep track of it so you can see what areas you need to strengthen, what areas. But then over time,
japa, I don't think is a good excuse to not to not spend time with your kids either.
No.
Because in theory, you could probably, and I'm not an expert on this, but you could probably chant very little japa and treat your kids like they're pure devotees, and still be fine in Krishna's eyes. Because Krishna wants those kids taken care of. That is like he said he called them in a letter to Grahasa that I guess was concerned about how his family was taking a lot of his time, and he felt like he wasn't doing enough service for the temple, and he wasn't getting to chant enough. And Prabhupada wrote back and he said, your children are your deities.
Yeah.
Focus on what you need to do right now. Now, when the children are grown now it's time to get back, provided they've lived that long.
But you can
chant and have your kids.
Well, you can. When you just said something about how you get someone to watch the kids when you go on a date. So I was just clarifying
I got you.
that it's not like, get rid of the kids so I can chant.
No, what I meant was, you will find
a way to
make it happen when it's something you want to do.
For sure.
But there's always until you make
For
advancement, there's always an excuse as to why you can't chant your japa.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, I didn't have time today. But then you you watched like an hour of two episodes of something on Netflix before bed, but you didn't chant your japa. Like I mean, I'm guilty of that.
Or you chant your japa late at night right before bed, and it's like Krishna. Okay, are you doing it out of guilt?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Are you doing whereas the japa that you chant, and this is why Prabhupada implemented the morning program, the whole thing, it gives things for the kids to do, it gives things for the adults to do, it creates like in the military, it's so regimented, your life becomes so easy when things are regimented. So
the structure.
You don't have to worry about it. What am I doing tomorrow? Well, my day is already planned up until like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. I wake up at 4:30, I go to Mangalarti, I chant my japa, I do my meditation, eat prasadam, listen to class. So you start your day off right.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is like...
Yeah, for sure.
Versus like, and with COVID not being able to go to the temple, I've noticed a big like... It's like a good... I mean, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know. It is...
I think we can pull it back now. We've number one been doing this for 2 hours, and also number two,
Sorry,
we're definitely no longer as focused on the interview aspect of it, and I think we've kind of gotten to a place where we can maybe wrap up. At least for this episode. But I did want to ask Mom if you had anything you wish we had asked that we did not ask.
Oh, I do have one question.
You have one more question, okay.
It might be a little long, but how did taking shelter...
You're going to have to do a lot of... Sorry, you're going to have to do a lot of editing.
So how did taking shelter of your guru change your life?
How did taking shelter of my guru change my life? In a very personal, practical way, actually. I was always feeling something missing because I didn't have a husband. Like that was a thing from when I was 15. In fact, and it was interesting because coming out of that time period where a lot of young girls were getting married off fairly young before that, like maybe just a few years before I was 15. And I wasn't really aware of that problem in our culture. and so I didn't understand why, like, I just wanted to be married. I wanted to be married. I wanted to be a grahasta. And like that, like I knew that was like part of my calling, right?
Really.
It was because I was. It's absolutely true. I know that because as soon as he came on the scene, I felt much better. But I still had that feeling like I needed support. I wanted to be. I wanted to have a partnership, and I wanted to be married. And everybody was like, "You're too young. Like, focus on other things. Like, there's so much else. Like," and nobody wanted to take me seriously. And so I was always on this mission to find a husband. So that was honestly, in a very practical sense, one of the biggest things that my Guru Maharaj did, because my parents were I was so headstrong, and my parents were not. Compared to me, my parents are not at all headstrong. Yeah. And so I was like, that's why I was able to bulldoze them so much as a young person and be able to like go out and party so much, because they just felt like they didn't have control over me. Yeah. And I would just argue until they were blue in the face and would finally give up, about anything, whether it was like, no, you shouldn't go out with these people or whatever. And so I didn't get that sense of protection from my parents that in some ways I wanted, but I wanted that protection to be so strong that it could combat me. You know what I mean? That it could like stand up to mine, but that was unreasonable. And by the time I met my spiritual master, I understood to some extent that was an unreasonable expectation and that you had to submit yourself to someone to get that protection, not that you fought them all the way and still expected them to protect you in that way. But by that time, my relationship with my parents was such that wasn't going to be possible for me to like say to my dad, hey, can you approve of anybody that I date or, So I submitted myself.
Now you're asking for
right, exactly. And so that was honestly one of the biggest things, because I guess I look at things a lot from a practical perspective, but that I wouldn't associate. Once I fully took shelter of my spiritual master, I wouldn't associate with anybody without his permission. Like any boyfriend, I wouldn't date somebody without him saying that he thought it was a good idea. And because I wanted that protection, I wanted somebody to approve and kind of vet anybody that I might date, because I'd been through so many unhealthy relationships and short-term relationships, and just really, it just wasn't going well for me in that department. And so I kind of I wouldn't date someone without going to him and saying, is it okay if I date this person? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think that they would be a good match for me? And he was very protective of me because he knew I already had kids. He wanted to make sure that the kids were in good hands. And so he offered that service to me as well. It wasn't like a conversation we had necessarily, but I knew that he would do that for me. And so I would go to him, I would ask for a meeting with him and then go and say, so I'm thinking about this Prabhu, this guy at the temple, what do you think? And then he'd be like, no, not a good idea. and so he said no a few times, and I know one time I was really, really stuck on a particular idea, and even asked an astrologer or something to be like, why is he saying no about this person? And and then the astrologer was like, well, it might be because of this or that or the other. And then and then that was how I met my husband, was because I was still very lonely, still really wanted to be in a relationship. And so I was crying on the shoulders of all my god sisters, and they were keeping an eye out for who might be a good match for her. Right. But then the last say was Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So finally, as I remember it, Mother Anasuya told me about Ajamil and that he was also looking for a wife, and she told Ajamil about me, and somehow gave us each other's contact information, which back in the day that would be a phone number and not a cell phone, but a landline, and an email address. So we had email at that point. So we emailed back and forth a couple times. I didn't even know how to type at that point, so it was took me hours to type out a short email. And then we finally got on the phone, and we had a long conversation, and right away he was opening up about really personal things, and I felt really I was beginning to become attached to him, and he had a lot of good qualities that I thought were awesome. And so then at the end of the conversation I said, okay, I'm not talking to you again unless you, because he was my godbrother, so he could go also to ask permission. It wouldn't just have to come from me. So I said, unless you get permission from Gurudev to associate with me or date me, I'm not going to speak to you again. So by this was maybe 2-3 o'clock in the morning, because we had been talking late into the night. And then by 8 o'clock in the morning, he called me back and he was like, I got permission. Gurudev said it's a good idea. I was like, okay, that's it. Guru said it's a good idea. I've asked about so many other people. He always said, no, you're a good idea. I'm marrying you. That was...
No, thank you.
But that was, I know that wasn't necessarily what exactly you were looking for in terms of, but that was a very personal and very practical way.
It did change your life, though. And
it did.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I think we often think the guru is only there not that you have to go dump all your problems on your guru by any means, but if there's something that's really affecting your life materially, that can also affect your spiritual life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if the guru
They can give you
is,
advice.
and someone like him, he's a psychotherapist, it's, very well, I feel, and because the different people are coming to him for advice, he also knows the going-ons of
the
people's intimate,
and,
personal lives, and so he's in the position, and this is, a bona fide guru is there. They can see, because of the power of, they're being empowered by, the acharyas and Srila Prabhupada. That,
and Krishna in their heart.
This is a good match. No, that's not a good match. Why? I don't need to, go into it. It's not, I feel like he always kept it very professional.
Yeah.
in that sense,
and he was also so personal on that level. Like, I mean, I know sometimes that didn't work out for people that like their guru might have thought that something was a good match and it wasn't.
Well, I was gonna say something about that. I don't think necessarily coming from a guru, the good match means it'll be an easy match.
That's true.
They may be saying, you know, the two of you are going to push each other, and if you make it through, you'll really be good for each other's spiritual life. It doesn't mean that it's going to be this nice, romantic, Disney movie, romance, like flower petals on the floor. It might mean that there's a lot of personal growth, a lot of baggage to unpack, a lot of traumas to unpack together, but if you do it, that you'll really be in a wonderful place at the end of your life to go back to Krishna.
For sure.
I mean, I'm not a guru, but I have to imagine that would be something
he's a celibate. He's not thinking of it from, I mean, a bona fide guru is not going to be thinking of it from the romantic, biological aspect. They're going to be thinking about
spiritually and mentally, maybe how mentally and spiritually compatible.
Can you help each other grow in Krishna consciousness if you do the work?
And you were wanting someone who could stand up to your
that's true.
brunt. Ajmil, who the hell else is gonna
like somebody who will fight me? I never thought about that. You're like, I want someone to fight me on this stuff. And now you're like, why are you fighting me on this stuff?
Remember, be careful what you pray for.
Yes! We came around to that, so that's good.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
now
really
ask
good. No, that's really great.
I wrote that down a while ago. I was wanting to try.
Be careful what you pray for. That might be the name of this video. But I mean, and you don't have to necessarily have an answer to this. But if there was something that you maybe thought you were going to talk about, didn't get a chance to talk about, some question you thought we might ask that we didn't ask, or something that now that we've talked through all this that you wish we had asked, anything you want to kind of leave off at the end with. And barring that, if there's anything you just feel like if you could teach everyone in the world one simple thing, what would it be? There's like some message that you could really like get through to like everybody in the world. What
it's funny, I've watched these interviews and I should have known these questions were going to come up.
And these are pretty much always our final questions.
I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, these are always
somehow.
The last two.
You are
Go figure.
Prepared.
It can be really simple. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just and it can be a point we already talked about.
Perfect job. There can be nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we covered a lot of things, honestly.
I was going to say, you can go back to something we already covered and just kind of say, actually, this part that we already went over is like the most powerful that I wish that, like, if anything sticks with people from this interview, this one point. It doesn't have to be something we haven't mentioned, is what I'm saying. It could be something that you just want to propound maybe a little bit more.
Right. I mean, one thing that I didn't get to elaborate on.
Expound, sorry.
One thing I didn't get to expound on was, I guess, that concept that we are here to care for each other, whether it's our children or or other people in our lives, our friends or parents or whatever, whoever is in our life. That, and even animals that come across our path, you know, you find an animal that's suffering and you can assist them in some way, but to always remember, and I think it helps with the level of detachment as well, that to always remember that we are just serving on behalf of Krishna, that we don't own one another in any way. And to also, I think with a level of detachment, when we really, really care about someone, sometimes we really feel attached to how things go down, or that we should be the one there to do certain things. And yes, if we can, that's wonderful. But if we're unable to be there at certain points in time for one another, to know that Krishna will arrange that person's care anyway. That the fact that I was there to care for you guys as children does not mean that I have to be there to care for you forever. Right? That when I'm not, like when Abhay went to the military, I had to realize that he doesn't belong to me. I had the opportunity to care for him for a period of time. I failed in some ways, I succeeded in other ways, you know. And by fail, I just mean I could have done things differently in some ways, and always as parents. But at the end of the day, Krishna made that arrangement that I was his mom for that period of time.
Yeah.
And now that he is
You're just the instrument.
outside of my control, I'm just an instrument. Now that he's outside of my control, or you're, now he's getting ready to get married, and now there's someone else who's facilitating some of his care.
Yeah.
And just, we all have each other in that way.
Yeah.
That when I'm in your presence, and even for my own sense of like, I've had really close friends die. And they were there for me at periods of time when maybe I wasn't taking shelter of my parents, but like elder friends. And that was so significant, but then they died also. And there's that fear that like with death, we have separation, and then who's going to be there for me in that way? Or when I die, where am I going to be? And having that faith and seeing from different points in my life, my own life, where when I wasn't taking shelter of my parents, there was somebody else that stepped in and did certain things for me that I needed. Krishna made arrangements that ultimately, both emotionally and physically, somehow my needs were being met. Now, sometimes, like you guys were pointing out, not always in the way that you want, sometimes in a way that's very uncomfortable and actually helps you to grow if you in the way that you need.
Well, that's the other thing,
if you take it that way.
Bad things, but there's a wider scope that we're not always aware of, including multiple lifetimes. Like you can't sit here and be like, "Oh, this one bad thing happened to me. It's horrible. There can't be a God." You don't understand all the things that have happened around that, why that happened. Also, you don't, like, again, you throw sand up in the air, sand gets in your eyes. It's your fault, not God's.
Right, and that was the other thing is with that, and that kind of led into this thought, is that not only is it not God's fault and then the sand got in your eyes when you threw it in the air, but also sometimes those things are happening, often those things are happening in such a way that you have the opportunity of how you perceive it. Again, your perception, your desires, those are things you have control over. So when something happens that seems like a setback, or what they call a reversal, or something that seems inauspicious or bad, if you use that opportunity to grow, you can turn that around into something good. If you see it as an opportunity. And I mean, even in the business world, they now say things like that. Don't say challenge, say opportunity, or because it really is true.
It is true.
Depending on how you
can let it beat
approach
you down.
things, you can either use it as a growth tool, and the same thing with disagreements in relationships. And that's another thing maybe we can talk about at another time. Is relationships with like your spouse and stuff like that, and how, if you view your relationship as a way to become more Krishna conscious and become a better person, if the whole purpose or the primary purpose of your relationship is how can I become a better person and help this other person to grow as well, then
it's not about your enjoyment. It goes a lot better.
It's not about, you can get so much more out of it ultimately, because you can grow in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise. And even if the relationship doesn't last as long as you expected it to, whether you're separated due to divorce or death or whatever happens, you can appreciate that now you just have, and that relationship had great value. Oh, sorry, I did it again.
Well, we just went over the time limit.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm like, no,
I should have known this.
Stop, keep going.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah, so anyway, I'll just restate that. So even when life or death separates us in relationships, regardless of what those relationships are, but I think in this particular sense, I'm maybe talking about like marital relationships or whatever, you can still appreciate those greatly, even if they were struggles at times, or even, you can still have a great appreciation for that relationship, for all the growth that you were able to get out of it, because this whole life is about us growing, learning to become the servant, learning to improve ourselves. So why would our relationships be not about that? That's,
it was like, thinking back to my experience in the military, like when you're in the moment, you're like, what the fuck? Like, why? what am I doing here? But then in hindsight, it really wasn't all that bad. I actually learned a lot from it. Like, so, and the thing is, like, it's easy to forget in the moment that there is a plan that's unfolding, right? But when you look back on your life, it's really easy to see how everything kind of came together.
Yeah.
But then there's a tendency to think that all of that came together to get me to where I am right now. And now that I'm here, what's going to happen? But like, something's going to happen.
Right, at some point the enjoyment will begin.
Yeah, like, but that's, and another thing I was going to say is you're talking about, there's always people coming in and out of your life to take care of you. You can also, a matter of perspective, you can choose to either see all of those people as separate individuals, or you can see that all of those people in my life, I was really building a relationship with Krishna, because the Krishna inside of your heart is no different than the Krishna in your heart. So Krishna is appearing to us constantly throughout our life, whether it's your pet. Like, I learned so many things from my cat, sitting there petting them. They'll come up to me while I'm chanting, and that's when, you're sitting there quiet, they come to you and they'll just like want to love up on you. Like, they know, like, the cats recognize, like, oh, you're in a meditation, and it's attractive to them. They want to come. Like, you can learn things from anything. And I heard a Bhakti-tirtha Swami lecture where he was saying we can learn from anything and everything, or something like that. Like, because it's all coming from Krishna.
Right.
So when you choose to see that, oh, my mom's dead now, but like, you can carry that relationship you have with your mom, you can treat all older women like that. And when you start treating other people like that, or treating you, I treat you the same way I treat my mom. And like, so I try to see that the relationship I have with one person doesn't have to only be like that with that one person. You can translate that to your relationship with everybody. If you try to see that you're really interacting with Krishna within their heart.
Right. And
this
and
is just, it's like we're like actors on the stage. And you're putting on different costumes, you're playing different roles, but you're still that same person underneath.
Yeah.
And so you're still interacting with the spirit soul.
And we interact in different ways in different lifetimes, and so on and so forth.
It's really
crazy. When you see all of that as a way to help us to improve our consciousness such that we can eventually go back home, back to Godhead, then every interaction is super valuable, and it's an opportunity.
It's a lesson.
And it's an opportunity to learn how to love better, to learn how to be present to others better. And when you see it that way, even when you're having challenges in relationship, you can overcome those challenges easier, because you're like, how can I improve here? And you're not just like thinking about how this person did you wrong or something, And with children too, you're seeing an opportunity when they're challenging you or frustrating you or whatever. You're also seeing an opportunity. How can I learn from this to become a better servant, to be more attentive to other people and what their needs are, be more selfless? How, what are they teaching me here? And I'll tell you something. This is what I want to end on. You guys, see, now I'm going to start crying. You guys. I saw that you had the tissues there. And this is even without crying. I usually need tissues all the time. Yeah, I know you. You guys have inspired me and helped me to grow more than, meaning all you kids that I had the blessing to have relationships with have helped me to grow more than I think anything or anyone has in my life. And that's not to say that the senior people in my life didn't teach me a lot and that sort of thing, but I think my learning, my effort to try to be a servant to you guys, and my perspective that you were here to try to teach, to not try, but that your presence in my life was a lesson for me as well, that has brought probably the most growth and love in my life. Like, I love you guys so much. And some of my best conversations are with you guys. And I've often thought, man, we should be we should be recording this conversation.
I know.
And like now
That's
we're finally
what inspired
intentionally
us to
doing
kind of
it.
start
That's why we
doing
started
this.
doing
I'm
this,
like,
yeah.
we were talking one day. I'm like, yo, like, we have like, we grew up in such a little treasured community. I'm like,
Why don't we talk about it? Yeah.
we need to, we need to start interviewing all these people because someday you will be not here, and like, I don't want to.
So I wish we had talked more
Yeah,
about stuff that we didn't talk about.
Right.
and
No, we
And
talked.
plus
then
it
to
brings
actually
closure
have
and
it-
it brings
Yeah.
like
Oh, absolutely.
growth. Even
And
now,
looking back on things, you get more clarity because we had our perspective growing up. Now we get to hear her perspective of growing up
exactly,
when we talk to her
it's
now.
I love it. It's amazing.
And
But-
honestly, I also want to hear more from you guys in terms of your perspective. We were reflecting recently, my husband and I, and actually some other members of our community. We had a meeting recently to just talk about how we can bring forth Bhakti Tirtha Swami's mood more. And one of the biggest things, and I'm going to say it publicly here, and I intend to do it, and this is not with everybody, but with everybody that I have the time to and am taking the time to intentionally be part of my like community and that we interact with on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I want to do the practice that Bhakti Tirtha Swami taught us to do, where you go once a year and you ask somebody, how can I improve? And I think along with that, I would like to add the questions, and this is something that maybe we can even have another conversation about.
Yeah, my batter's at 4%.
Okay, I'm wrapping it up here. Is, have I been of service to you this year? You know, like we do a check-in at work all the time. Like, how was my work performance? Like, we should check in with our relationships too.
Yeah,
Like, have I been of service to you? Have I offended you in any way? And is there areas where you feel that I could improve?
Okay.
And I would like to do that with you guys on a regular basis. I would like to shut up and listen at some point about, you know, your experiences growing up and also now with our relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing for a lot of people to do. So we need to end this now because if I don't hit stop before the battery runs out, it will delete everything we've done.
Oh no! Oh
So,
no!
but we continue. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.
This has been Soul Purpose,
Thanks for
Mother
being
Purana,
here.
our mother growing up,
Our mom.
one of our many moms.
Yeah.
Thank you for
see guys
having
next
me.
time.